Welcome back to the LakeScape podcast. I'm Dave McGirt, joined with Daniel Jackson, as always. And we're starting a new series, which is talking about how do you plan that entire LakeScape project, and meaning all the things that are a part of your LakeScape, kind of from the mailbox to the end of the pier. So this week, we're going to start with the first section, which is starting in the water. We're going to start talking about the dock. And as simple a term as that is, what are all what are the big pieces that we need to really focus on? And what we've been able to do is kind of put that in four basic bullet points, the four things you need to be able to understand to actually go and design that project. So number one, sounds simple, but what is the vision for that project? And then what's your budget, right? Because at the end of the day, our vision and our budget have to align. Then we get into what materials I want to get into. Let's not get married to a material before we figure out our vision and our budget. And then we tie in the back, which is what are those essential features that we have to have for our family and how we use our lake property, et cetera. So Daniel, as we dive into those four big buckets, let's start with vision. What are some of the ways that we use to pull that information out of our client and give them that broad understanding of, that simple pier, and what's their vision for using their water and how they do it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the first step in kind of defining your vision would be really just kind of, listing out your wants and needs. Who's going to use the dock? How many people are going to be on it? What size boat do you have? Kind of think about what's going to be required for, the size boat, and then how many people you got. That's going to be kind of step one.
To that end, how far into the future do they need to think, right? It's like, I have a pontoon boat today. The kids are too young for a wakeboard boat, but I know there's going to be a second boat in the future. Sure. I mean, are those kind of things that you want to have in the back of your mind as you design that footprint and allow for that expandability later?
Yeah, definitely. So with the boat lifts, they can be added, as a phase two very easily, especially with the boathouses. Uncovered docks can be done as well. So yeah, that is something we encourage people to think through is how am I using the property today? And then, what do we see down the road? Are we going to add, going to have teenagers and need Sea-Doos? We're going to switch boats. A lot of that can be modified to work as you do kind of grow with the property. But it is good to plan and kind of think about, what's down the road.
So for me, like the nightmare process, even in grade school, was, you have to write this report and you start with a blank piece of paper. And it's like, where do I start? Have you found it effective to have these base plans for folks to start to work with and then be able to kind of mold their vision into that? Is that helpful?
Exactly. Yeah. So we built out several base plans. They're going to be from your uncovered dock, adding a slip or two slips and boat lifts all the way to the boathouse and double deckers. So with that, we're able to give you some of the most common layouts that we've used over the last 34 years. We know now what designs have worked, what hasn't worked, and what has needed to be changed to work to like current boat sizes and different needs. But yeah, we have base plans, and that kind of leads us into the next part of the budget. With that base plan, we have an understanding of all the costs associated with kind of, the different layouts and different features, and our sales process can kind of help think through that with you.
And you alluded to that earlier in the sense of, it's a lot of money, right? To go from zero to a double decker. And is there a way to phase this over multiple years in some cases, or is it you have to build everything day zero and there's no options like that?
Definitely. Yeah, there's lots of options to build phases. A lot of times we'll build a fixed structure, just a platform, and then be able to add on a slip the next year or 2 years later, and then even add a second slip. But we need to think about that kind of in the planning process, kind of what we're talking about now, to make sure that you have square footage or setback. So there's a lot of things that need to be taken in consideration to be able to make that happen.
And it's also one of the kind of painful things that we run into pretty often, whereas a customers, they went, I'll call it what it is, they went cheap and got the dock they thought they wanted very economically, and then they come back and say, hey, I want to add a roof, I want to add another slip, I want to add a double decker, I want to take away the roof and put on a second story. That's when they find out they don't have the foundation and construction to do any of that, and they end up basically throwing away everything they spent, which doesn't make it seem so cheap anymore. So I think it's really important for you at home to understand it's a pretty significant investment you're making, but there's some foundational things that you're doing. You know, if you think you're only going to have a 1-bedroom, 1-story house, there's a level of investment you make into your concrete foundation. If you know you're going to add a 2nd story, you know you're going to add a 3rd story, then significantly different base there. So I think it like you started with it, you know, what is that long-term vision? You know, hey, today we're working with this budget, but we know where we're headed. So let's make sure our foundation is built to support where we want to go down the road, because it is quite painful to go back to someone and say, well, we literally have to tear this cheap little roof off, replace all of these poles, and do all these things. And they were like, well, what's left? Well, basically nothing of what you've already spent money on, because you didn't actually put the foundational things to do.
Yeah, exactly.
Which I guess kind of leads back, you know, so that's the budget is a big driver, but that can also be mitigated with, you know, some phased planning. And, you know, because at the same token, it's like, well, that's great. I want this amazing dock, but I also have to buy the boat. And those numbers start to add up, as we know.
Sure.
So dock materials. So talk to me about what kind of materials should I be thinking about? And then also, obviously, that influences budget as well.
Yeah, so the main item there is just going to be decking material. Obviously, we can do wood decking. You can do an upgraded wood decking with Ipe, Brazilian hardwoods as well. That does get expensive, even more expensive in most cases than your composites and PVC decking. So we do have TimberTech composite, cap composite decking, and the TimberTech advanced PVC decking. So you have about 3 different levels of upgrade when you get into the TimberTech products. And those are going to be your main option. We do have aluminum decking as well. That's mainly used on upper decks. We can use it on lower decks as well. Typically, those work out well on floating structures, aluminum structures. And then when you get into the boat houses, you're going to need you have roofing options. Do you want shingles? Do you want metal? What kind of style of the metal do you want to get? And then you got bumper options, accessorize, kind of accessories to build out on. But those are going to be your main buckets is going to be your decking choices.
Got it. And then obviously if you live in an HOA controlled area, that HOA may dictate colors, style of roofing and shapes and things like that. So obviously you need to be aware of that. Back to the decking. So the age-old question, like, do you guys have Trex? I don't know what TimberTech is.
Yeah, exactly.
So what's the difference between Trex?
Trex, their entire lineup is going to be a cap composite. So it's going to have a PVC coating, composite core. Trex does have a 3-sided product, which means it's going to be capped on 3 sides and exposed on the bottom. TimberTech has the similar product, whereas theirs is just fully capped. So it's going to be encapsulated on all 4 sides. It still has the composite core, which is the wood fiber plastic material, and then the PVC cap. When you get into the TimberTech Advanced PVC line, that's going to be solid PVC. With that, you get better warranties, lifetime warranty, 50-year fade and stain, and it's going to be far superior to any of the cap composites.
A lot of folks, Trex is just like if you say Xerox, or in the South, you say, I want a Coke, and then I ask you what kind.
Yeah.
Pepsi. No. So a lot of folks come in and say, hey, I want Trex. Well, that's just a term for a composite or a structured composite. So it is important. Sometimes we get a little geeky with all the terms and the brands and things like that. But the reality is from just normal treated lumber all the way to solid PVC, there are a lot of great options. And back to, a lot of that's influenced by budget, but a lot of it's also influenced by your vision. This is my vision for the next 30 years, then maybe I want to invest in something that I know is going to last 30 years. It will be warranted for 30 years and is never going to fade. Versus, this is my first lake home. I'm not sure how we're going to use the lake. We've got kids on the way, so that's all going to change. Maybe stick with just regular wood. It doesn't last as long, but there's probably a good chance you're going to remodel. I liken it to the kitchen, right? We have a lot of customers that absolutely will tear down a perfectly good dock that doesn't meet their needs. So just like a kind of a kitchen remodel, docks get remodeled for the same reason. We've decided that, we used to visit the lake 3 times a year. Now we're there every weekend, and we do want that upper deck for an entertainment space because we live on this structure. So there's a lot of options there when you think about the materials, which come right back to where you started. What's your vision? for what you want to do, not necessarily just budget, but what is that long-term vision?
And the dock materials can also be, you can look at that as a phase as well. So we've done several docks over the years where we'll do wood decking, and then they want to get the life out of the wood decking, and a few years later come back and put a composite on it. That allows them to maybe get the structure they want right away, and then kind of save, and stay within budget, and then knowing they can always come back. And the way that we build now, all of our docks are built on 12-inch centers. So anytime you want to upgrade to a composite, it's going to be the correct joist space. And that used to be a big deal. Years ago, somebody put 2x6 decking down on a dock. It's on 24-inch centers. We have to come in and add joists, and there's so much rework that has to go on that it doesn't make it, affordable, I guess, as a phase 2 type project.
Well, it comes back to those foundational issues that, you at home are not an expert dock builder, so it's your job to help know what questions to ask, and the spacing, how they build the dock matters, because the reality is everyone's building the dock for basically the same amount of cost. So there shouldn't be a dramatic difference in cost. Like, we obviously are on the higher end because of all the services that we bring and the warranties we bring to our customer. But if someone is 30% cheaper, there's fundamentally something different. And this is one of those, again, it's very painful when a customer comes and goes, you know what, we changed our mind, we want to go with composite, we'll just swap out the boards. Oh, well, structurally, they built this very cheap, therefore you're going to have to now pay to fix that. And it's painful, and back to our foundational things, like we build it correctly to where if you decide this is your forever design, well, you could, when those boards do rot out, they're wood, they're not going to last forever. Put in composite, and it's literally you're just swapping out boards for the most part. So I think some of those foundational things are there. So we figured out the layout. We figured out kind of big picture structure. What are some of those essential kind of features that get layered on top of that? And not to go too far down the rabbit hole, but to give at least people some understanding of the big options.
Yeah, so the main item would be boat lifts. So we do have a lot of different style of lifts for even uncovered. We have the topless lift, which has become very popular. We don't have the beams to get in the way on the side, and then different style boathouse lifts. Some that are faster, some that require different electrical requirements. So then you'll have PWC lifts. Stairs, if you want ladders to get in and out of the water, any kind of dock lighting, that's become a very common thing for us lately. Almost every project is adding some kind of lighting out there. And then you get, some of the more upgrades for the lifts. You got smart lift controls by Premier Remote. That's a very popular product as well. And then we also have safety features, putting the wavelength secure out there so that you're able to monitor your water and make sure that it's safe for the kids and family.
As simple as this is a quick discussion about all the options. One of the things we did want to do and we put together is what we call a dock upgrade cost calculator and checklist, right? So there'll be a link here on the screen some way or direction and down in the description, but it's a PDF that you can download for free, right? And it's going to take you through all of the things we just discussed. It's going to take you through how do I define that vision? What are the important things I need to understand? What are the budgetary things I need to think about and how that rolls into my design? Some of the styles and materials, just some examples, so you have a really good example of what's out there and kind of what you have to pick from. And then as you roll through that, there's also you explore the boat lifts and the PWC lifts. And we put some numbers with this, right? So, one of my pet peeves is when you go to someone and you go, hey, that looks really interesting. Oh, well, in order for me to give you a number, we're going to have to get married. No, we're going to give you that information, and you can probably put together your own high-level budget of, what your project might look like, at least the very first part of your entire Lakescape, which is that dock. So we're really excited to get that out to you guys. You'll see it on the website. You'll see it on all the socials, obviously in the link in the description in this cast. But we just want to take a minute to share with you that. I think the next topic is we're going to get into the landscape side, specifically the softscapes. So sod, irrigation, drainage. We have this beautiful dock. Well, the first thing we want to walk out to is probably some beautiful green grass. And how do we make that happen and maintain it? And then we'll work our way into the hardscapes, and then we'll work our way into the porches and patios and spas and all the things that are going on in pools. And then until we get to the mailbox, and hopefully we'll cover the majority of the things that really make up your Lakescape and help you guys have a kind of more educated conversation with whoever your contractor is. We'd love for you to be our customer, but if not, we want you to make a really educated decision with whoever that contractor is and be able to ask the right questions for you and your family in a very important long-term investment. So thank you again for spending time with us, and we'll look forward to talking to you next week.